Hello everyone, Kent Bresler here. I want to welcome you to Kent's Kidney Stories. During our time together over these podcasts, I'd like to discuss kidney disease. I'd like to tell you about my journey as a transplant patient, but also talk about dialysis, kidney donation, and just about anything else that might be of interest. Kent's Kidney Stories, podcast endorsed and sponsored by kidneysolutions.org.
Hello, everybody. This is Kent Bresler, and we're going to do some podcasting this morning. It's morning where I am. I don't know where it is, what it is where you are, but the weather's starting to be springy here in Kerrville, Texas, and I'm looking forward today. I have a great guest, and I just can't wait to get started. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, relationships can sometimes test our patience and humility. Help us put aside our egos and our pride so that we may listen and learn from others. Grant us that patience that's needed to navigate through disagreements and conflicts with grace and understanding. Thank you for your valuable lessons that arise from challenges in our relationships. And we ask that you look upon everyone that's on any waiting list for a transplant. They suffer, but they are always taken care of by you. So we ask all of this in your holy name. Amen. So I wanted to let everybody know that our support group on Monday nights at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time has become a tremendous gift to me and to many, many others. We have special guest speaker coming in this month, Dr. Pandey, and he's going to talk about infection control and infectious diseases in the transplant community, and actually in the CKD community also. I also wanted to let you know that Kent's Kidney Stories reached 125 sessions within this last podcast, and I want you to go to Kent's Kidney Stories and listen to some of these. Not for me, but for yourself. There's a tremendous amount of information there that allows you to make decisions and just be more aware of what's going on in the kidney space. And then the third thing is we're having our second annual, yes, that's second annual, we were not afraid to do it again, our walk, which is scheduled for April 13th in Kerrville. And I know not everybody can attend, so we have a virtual arm to it. That's a tremendous walk. We've had people from actually all over the state and some out-of-staters. So it's growing. We had over 100 and some people participate last year, and we're expecting many, many more. So, if you can't show up, at least do a virtual walk with us. All the funds that we get from this walk uh, just helps to fund Kidney Solutions and all the things that we do, not only for patients, but for education. And it's just an arm of Kidney Solutions, and we need funding to continue to walk. And I want to say thank you so very much to James Avey Craftsman for their $20,000 donation. We're putting that to really great use, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much for that. So enough of that baloney. Here's something I want to talk about today. I have a fellow guest that has the same illness as I do, and I love talking to people who have this condition. So I'm going to talk today with Jennifer Kramer Miller. She's an author and the author of Incurable Optimist, Living with Illness and Chronic Hope. She, as I said, is a fellow FSGS patient with several years facing dialysis and transplant. I want to welcome Jennifer, and it's great to finally get to connect with her. So, Jennifer, introduce yourself.
Hello, Kent. I am so excited to be here with you today. And yes, being a fellow FSGS patient, we have a lot to talk about. So
Yes,
I'm
we
thrilled
do.
and thank you. Thank you for mentioning my book, Incurable Optimist, Living with Illness and Chronic Hope. It's been really a great experience being able to more broadly share my story to connect with other people who are going through a lot of challenges in their life. So I'm really happy to be here.
I it's really when I get to talk with people, when I started these podcasts, I wasn't doing a video where I could actually see the person. And it makes it so much easier than talking on the telephone. It
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 does.
brings a whole you just look great for someone with I know uh, a very serious illness. You wouldn't know it looking at you. So I just want
Thank
to
you
make
so
sure.
much.
Yeah, I want you to know that the book was a delight. I'm not finished it, I'll admit, because I keep going back and rereading portions of it because it
Yeah.
it it plays on my heartstrings. It's exactly what FSGS patients go through, and not very many people understand the concept. They don't get it. Uh,
No, not at all. And it is, even if you're not an FSGS patient, I'm the board chair of the National Kidney Foundation serving Minnesota. And I work with a woman who is on staff at NKF, and she's had a kidney transplant. And she is a young woman. I think, she's in her 20s. And she read my book and said, "Thank you so much for putting words to things that I have felt but could have never articulated like that." And that made me so happy that she found herself in the pages. And a lot of people are finding themselves in the pages. And that's why I love to read. If I read something that resonates with how I feel, but I wasn't able to actually say it like that, it creates such an inner understanding. So I'm glad that that's happening for people.
it's definitely happened for me. Man, I one of the before I even get started here, I call it steroid bombardment when you first are diagnosed. We'll get into
Yes.
that
Oh my
probably
goodness.
probably a little later because that is one part of this whole illness that is absolutely it's scary. It's just absolutely scary because you got to look in the
It
mirror in the morning, and it creates a lot of change. But we'll talk about that.
it's a crazy medication. Yes, I agree
Yeah,
with you.
we'll talk about that. We'll get there. If not, you bring me back. If I get off on a bunny trail, you
Okay,
drag
I'll
me
make a little
back.
note here.
All right. Okay. So this book that you didn't write in a couple weeks. I guarantee you, it is a volume. It's essentially it's a novel in a way, in my heart, because it tells.
Thank you for saying that. I tried to make it read like a novel because I think any good memoir has to be a story that, like a novel, pulls you through. And I didn't want, I mean, I think there's a great story behind it. I think all of us kidney patients who feel blessed like you and I do to have received kidneys and to have people who actually show up with kindness to become donors. There's just nothing more miraculous to me than the kindness that sort of gets presented to you when you're in this situation. So I really think of it as a family love story. I think that there's so much goodness that I've been able to experience from something that is bad. So it's really I wanted people to know that there's a very uplifting side to going through hard things and having the people who just come out to lift you and support you. There's a lot of magic to that.
I think it's the blessing of our Lord that it's amazing how He puts people in a position to help you. And it's like we've said
Absolutely.
before, and when we talked earlier before we came on the broadcast, it's a when you look at someone with kidney disease, you 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 can't define their kidney disease by looking in their face. Just doesn't. They don't have it. They
Right.
don't have the look. All right.
Right.
So consequently, every time you think about your illness, when you personalize it, when you start thinking about yourself, it's scary. This is a very
Yeah.
scary disease, and it does not manifest and it does not progress the same for everybody. It is totally different. right?
Totally different. You and I, if we lined up our stories, we definitely see that it can manifest very differently in different people for sure.
There's lots of folks out there that I spent a lot of time with FSGS patients over the years, and I can tell you that the vast majority of them don't fare as well as I have. I must admit, I've been very blessed. But
Yeah.
the ability for people to adapt, to change in their bodies is miraculous. I mean, we talked about this a little earlier, how many things can happen to you. And as longer you have that transplant, as long as you have, FSGS never goes away, right?
Right. That's why it's an incurable illness. And that's why my book was named Incurable Optimist,
Yeah.
because that incurable label, I wish I could shed it, but I can't. I would do anything. I wish I could be, I dream of Genie and like blink my eyes and make it go away. But what I've been able to do is attach my optimistic nature to my incurable nature. And, we muddle through. We have to. We get to a point, I think, where there's a lot of despair with early, diagnosis. I was 22 when I was diagnosed, and I was really ready to launch my life. I thought I didn't have any reason to think things weren't going to just go according to plan. And so it was kind of a very shocking situation when at 22 years old, I started to feel puffy and tired and just sort of off. And so I went to the doctor like you would expect. And what I expected was maybe the flu or a virus, something sort of medically familiar. But instead, I learned that I had protein in my urine. And I didn't know anything about kidneys at the time. I didn't know that protein has no place in your urine. And I certainly didn't know that that moment with that doctor was going to cascade into here I am, 30 some years later, talking to you on a podcast about 4 kidney transplants and being on dialysis 3 times. And when I tell people that I've had 4 kidney transplants, I've been speaking in the community and doing different events. And I usually have to pause after I say that for, people to get their audible gasps out, because you don't often hear about people having 4 kidney transplants. But I always quickly want to say, but wait, just don't let that throw you. I have a really beautiful and amazing life. And I think that's what we have to do when we're kidney patients and we're dealing with chronic kidney disease or any challenges. Initially, sure, there's despair, and that's human. But eventually, we have to figure out how we're going to manage this uncertainty and how we can move forward with hope and have joy in our lives. And I think that's kind of been the thing that I've been working on since I was 22. And it's hard and it's possible. And seeing the beauty that surrounds us when we have, like in your case, a brother who donated his kidney to you, and in my case, my mom and my husband in a paired exchange and an altruistic donor. I mean, these are heroes that show up for us. And you mentioned that God kind of helps us get through these things. And I just started to, there was a point early on when I was in the hospital, and a priest came in my room and prayed with me and for me. And I was a little shy about it. I didn't know if I was worthy to have a priest in the room, because I didn't know if I was, good enough, and if I was religious enough. And it was such a beautiful moment when I just sort of melted and let his prayer it just soaked into me. And I felt like I belonged, like he was making me feel like you belong here. We are going to pray for you to get better. And I suddenly had this realization of how connected we all are. And all the people that, I was reading books that were lifting me up, and I had family and friends who were lifting me up. And this priest came in and lifted me up, and all these doctors were trying to help me. And I just had this sudden awareness of this connectedness of all these people who who lift us up. And that feels like kind of this godly universe of kindness that really shows up for us. And we get to feel that. And I don't want to say there's like, it's not a blast having a kidney disease, but it's a wonderful realization of how we're so connected. And we really get that, right?
Yeah, I do. You said the word joy, and we've been spending a lot of time talking about joy in the support group, and you got to have it. One thing that really surprises me is how well and easily uh, it is for people to understand after they see what you go through. But it's the going through it and trying to explain it that becomes the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you had 4 transplants, and a lot of people
Yep.
are look and look and look and look and look and they seek, and they just don't get transplanted. And that's not
Yeah.
lost on me. I had one shot at it and it's been good for 30 some years. And you've had 4 transplants, and that's the expression of what FSGS is. You've had 4,
Yep.
I've had 1. Some people get none. Some people die before they even get one. That
Yes.
is not the way to look at things. How have you dealt with the idea that you have been blessed with 4 transplants? How you have got to have thought about that in detail.
Yes, I definitely have thought about that in detail. And the fact that the people, like I said, that show up for people, um, is amazing. And then it makes, like, I'm an advocate for kidney patients. So I know that not everybody gets transplants. And I know that the system has not favored everybody equally. And
Nope.
so, as the board chair of NKF, we're working so hard for health equity for all and transplants for all. And what I've known in my journey and in my lifetime with kidney disease is the paired exchange program has been really a game changer. My last kidney was 12 and a half years ago, which is my longest lasting kidney that I've had. And that came about because my husband wanted to donate to me, but we weren't a match.
Right?
So we went into a paired exchange. And an altruistic 25-year-old donor was a match for me. And so before I was ever in this paired exchange program 12 and a half years ago, my mom donated her kidney to me prior to that. And that was a living donor. That was my first living donor. So it's going to get confusing with all these 4 transplants. So let me just quickly tell you, my first 2 were from deceased donor list.
Right?
My third was my mom, living donor. And my fourth, my husband indirectly gave me his kidney through a paired exchange, and I got a kidney from an altruistic donor.
Understood.
But so in that time, in all these years, I've seen how living donation makes a big difference. That my mom's living donation kidney preempted dialysis for me. And I know you and I both are big fans of not going on dialysis if it's
Absolutely.
possible and
Absolutely.
getting a living donor. And so that changed the landscape. But now we're talking about people out there who might not have somebody who's a match for them. If somebody can find somebody who is willing to donate but is not a match, there's the paired exchange program, and that's helped people get kidneys. That's been a really wonderful thing about this kind of cookie swap of kidneys. So
Yeah.
um, it's changed things. It definitely has. And so at the National Kidney Foundation, we have a program called Big Ask, Big Give. And I fully understand how difficult it is for people to think of asking someone for a kidney. And I can't do that myself. You would think that I would know how to do that, having had so many transplants, but I've never asked anybody for a kidney. What we tell people at these Big Ask, Big Give seminars is all you have to do is tell your story. Telling your story is your job. And if somebody out there receives your story and wants to come forward and volunteer to donate a kidney, that happens independently of you asking. And that really makes people more relaxed because I often say it's hard to even ask someone to take you to the airport, let alone ask them for a kidney. So, um, sharing your story is something that we really help people with when they feel very overwhelmed with that. But yeah, no, it feels a little bit miraculous to me that I've had all these kidney transplants.
Yeah,
I
really.
don't even know another way to say it.
It is. It is a miracle. Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. Yeah, living donation, it's the bee's knees in the kidney.
Yep.
And it we could go off on a bunny trail here real quick, but we're not going to do it. And paired exchange has been a lifesaver. At Kidney Solutions, we're mentors, we're not donor hunters. We spend an awful lot of
Yep.
time working with a very large crowd. I call them the crowd, and they are the vast majority of people who are seeking a kidney donor. We tell them, you know what? It's not so much in the ask, it's in the belief that if you do tell your story, people will come. God sends them. We don't find them for you. It doesn't happen. God sends those people. And I really believe
Absolutely.
that. That's died stuck right in my heart it's a divine intervention, period.
Yeah.
It's just
And
the
I've always
timing of it
loved,
that's not always right.
yeah, the timing can be, something that requires patience. There's a lot of waiting when you're a kidney patient, waiting and waiting and waiting. But I've always loved, Mr. Rogers has kind of a famous quote that his mom used to always say to him when difficult things were happening in the world. And she would say, look for the helpers. Where there's helpers, there is hope. And I think that that is beautifully true. I mean, you know this from your work with all these kidney patients at Kidney Solutions. People do show up for people, and the helpers are amazing, you know, sent by God and goodness. And however the whole system works, it's amazing to see people show up for other people.
I think that's the hallmark of kidney patients who've been transplanted.
Yeah.
It's not a matter. It's not a matter of, oh, thank God I got this done, and I can move on. That's not the first thing out of the vast majority of people's mouths is, how can I help? How can I give back? How can I pay back? That part of
Yes.
it is very, very important. And we search them out, and we've got a lot of them. We have made mentors out of a lot of folks that have been transplanted, and they're great mentors. They walk the walk.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We cannot finish our conversation without me just saying this. So I'm going to say it now. I am so impressed with Kidney Solutions and what you have personally done with your gratitude for your kidney. It's amazing. You've created an amazing organization that is helping so many people. And, um, like people reach out to me after I do a book talk or an event, and a family reached out to me and said, we need a support group for us, for the family members, because kidney disease is a family affair.
Oh gosh, yes.
And Kidney Solutions is about the only place I know that offers that for
We
families.
we have we have we have we have a don't say no policy. They say, just say no to
Yeah,
drugs or whatever that we
right.
have a just never say no. If someone
Never say no.
calls
I
and
love
yeah,
that.
yeah, and that doesn't mean we're preemptive in nature at Kidney Solutions. We want to be preemptive in nature. We want to get you taken care of before you have to go on dialysis. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. The point
Sure.
being that given all that you're able to do, you can't do everything for everyone. It's just not going to happen. But you have to
Right.
have the idea that if you stop working at helping, like you said, being a giver,
Right.
it'll all collapse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll all collapse.
And it only feels right. Like I feel so steeped in gratitude for what people have given me.
Oh yeah,
And the only thing I know how to do is share my story and help other people. I mean, I just feel very called to do that. And I am a mentor for the National Kidney Foundation Peers
yeah.
Mentor Program.
Hmm.
And and I feel like I have so much to help people with because I have so much experience. So if
Exactly.
someone is struggling with something, I have a lot of empathy and I have a lot of understanding. And I love that work. And when I wrote the book, I thought this is a way to broaden that reach. I
Mm-hmm.
can do like I can speak to more people at a time than one person one on one. And I love the one person one on one. But yeah, I think you're right that when we receive these gifts of goodness, and really I think of it as the gift of being alive. And I'm a big fan of being alive. I think
Me
being
too.
alive is a pretty good thing to be. So I feel
Yeah.
very fulfilled being able to help other people who are going through these hard things. We go through hard things. We do, and we have to talk about it and feel it and express it, and then try to have hope be kind of the engine that can pull us through so that we can manage this uncertainty and find that joy that we all want to have in our lives.
I remember being diagnosed. Uh, People have heard this story 1,000 times. You're going to hear it again. I remember the doctor telling me that you've got a bad disease, Kent. And my wife was with me right there when he told us. And he said, we need to get you transplanted. You won't do well on dialysis. You are too active and you just won't do well on dialysis. I can tell you that right now. So we need to get you a kidney transplant. And he went all the way through that concept. And then he said, but I want to kind of taper it a little bit here for you, tampering it down. The disease process that you have, this FSGS, can and most likely will come back at some point in your life. And that was the only thing I heard him say.
Yeah.
That is the only thing I heard out of that whole conversation. I remember it now today, but at the time, I walked out of there thinking, well, what's the use? Until
Yeah.
my wife said to me, you have to. We got kids. You got to do whatever he says. And then
Yeah.
you got to go with it because we need you here. I need you.
Yeah. It's
And
a
that was
big
from someone
moment to
who's, yeah,
receive that.
it was very, very hard to understand. And so, that just proceeded. And the minute she said that, I went back in. I went back in and asked secretary if I could talk to Dr. Mulgrew. And she went out again. This guy's office was, I mean, it was exploding with people. We were sitting in the hallway when he talked to us. Never
Mm.
got to a room. And
Wow.
I told him, I said, Dr. Mulgrew, whatever it is, I'm here. I'm going to do this as a professional RN and just as a human being with family. You tell me, I'll take that path. Just tell me, right? And
Yeah.
that was an acceptance I didn't have except for a few words from my wife afterwards. And I know you've
Yeah.
had that same experience when they told you that this can come back. FSGS can come back.
Yes. I
And it
found out it
has for
can come
you.
back.
It's
It
done that
come
on you.
Oh my gosh, my first transplant. So I was diagnosed at 22. My first transplant was 25 because I was right on the brink of being 23. So I was on dialysis for like a year and 8 months. I had kidney failure in 6 months. And I didn't know that it was going to come back. I got my first transplant and I was so thrilled that I had been living in Seattle where I had an apartment and a best friend and a promising PR position. And then I came back to Minneapolis because my dad, a custom home builder, had built a house for a nephrologist and I knew I needed a biopsy. My dad and mom said, come back home. We know someone we trust to get the biopsy. And biopsy was a terrifying word for me at
Oh
22.
my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Terrifying,
How
right?
in
I
the
mean, now
world?
when you're a kidney patient and you've been in this business for a while, you know that people get kidney biopsies often, but I just thought that means I have cancer. What is
Yeah.
that word having to do with me? Right? It's this terrible word. And so I just thought, okay, I'm going to soldier through this dialysis. I'm going to get a kidney and then I'm going to go back to Seattle and just pick up my life where I left off. I thought it was going to be a temporary bummer,
Yep.
but I didn't know that it was going to come back. That didn't get planted into my brain.
Oh,
And
it
so
was
when I got my
embedded.
first,
It was embedded in
yeah,
my brain. See the difference already? Just in the
yes.
just the difference. It's
So,
tremendous
so
difference.
you know what happened, Kent? On day 3 of my wonderful transplant that was going to take me back to, my future, my FSGS recurred on day 3, and I had 10 grams of protein in my urine. And then I was just sunk into, oh no, what? Like, it was going to be the train ride to my future, but the train wasn't leaving the station.
Yeah, it
I
wasn't
just
gassed
didn't
up.
know at that point, how am I going to have a good life? Like, what's going to happen? I'm never going to have any of the things that I planned for in my life. And I was in some pretty deep despair. And my nephrologist said at that point, I didn't want it to come back. It was almost like I wrote in the book, did we talk about that it could come back? I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
And it was such a bomb. It just was such a bomb. And then he said, you need to know that transplants are a vacation from dialysis.
That's all it
And
is.
he was kind of preparing me for the fact that, as you know, and I'm sure most of your listeners know, when you have kidney failure, there's 2 ways to be alive. One is to be on dialysis, one is to have a transplant. And then you and I talked before about you can choose palliative care if
That's the
that's
third.
right for
That's the
you,
third. That's
your
the third
third
one. There's
way.
only 3. Hmm.
So I knew he was kind of managing my expectations that you just got to know you're going to either be transplanted and on dialysis or transplanted on dialysis. That's the way your life is going to go. And at that point, I had to make a shift in my thinking. And I was inspired by a Joseph Campbell quote, which is pretty well known. We must be willing to give up the life we've planned so as to accept the one that waits. And with that in mind and sort of like sifting through despair, I realized, okay, I'm going to make a choice to live my life the best I can because I I had such gratitude for the donor family. I knew that my time that I was going to have with this kidney, and I didn't know if it was going to be 6 months, you know, 6 years. I had no idea how long it was going to last. I knew FSGS was doing its thing already, but I really felt like I owed it to the family who was involved with their loved one being a donor to live my life with that kidney the best way that I could. And so I set out to relish this transplant vacation. And that's what I did. And that's what I've done ever since. I very much appreciate every day that I have a kidney in me that's filtering my blood because I know at any time it could be otherwise.
And I had 2 days of dialysis. 2 days, right?
2 days. Yep.
2 days. And everybody says, well, that's not even dialysis. Well, I'll tell you what, dang near died. All right.
Wow. Your
But
doctor was so smart with you.
he did. He told me, Kent, you just won't do well. Not only your
Yeah.
mental outlook and the way you carry yourself and your busyness, he called it busyness, but he said, your body won't take it and you can't afford
Yeah.
that.
He
So we're
was
going to do a
really a
transplant.
good doctor.
Yeah. And he's still around, believe it or not. I still go to
Because that
him
was what, 37 years ago?
37. Yeah, we'll be 37. Well, actually, when I first went to him was almost 40 now. I just had lunch with him
And
last couple weeks ago.
wow, wasn't he ahead of his time?
Way ahead.
Because
Way ahead.
to skip dialysis and go right to transplant,
Yep.
not many people were talking about that back then.
Nope. Nope. And when I hug my wife every day for what she did to me. She did it to me. She didn't
Yeah.
she it wasn't a matter of, oh well, by the way, I think you're being childish. She said, we need you. And you got
Yeah.
to do what he says. He knows what's going on. You got to.
And that's the interconnectedness of all of us with our family and our
Oh
people. And
gosh, yeah.
she needed you, like you're an important person. You can't just give up. And we
No,
all learn a lot of lessons, I think, about not giving up.
that you couldn't have said it better. Because that's what brings joy. That's the
Yep.
joy life is to be able to accept it, knowing that everything that goes on to you, every time, every day that goes by, there's an adjustment that's going to be made, whether you want to make it or not, physiologically.
Right.
But mentally and emotionally, in your, like we said, and your book spells it out completely, is that you have to set the frame. You've got to be
Yep.
in the moment, and you've got to make the decision to go forward with joy in your heart. I
Yep.
mean, that's
And
it.
it's the better choice.
Sure it
It's a
is.
better way to live.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that I did a podcast with a gal who's been transplanted 4 times, has FSGS, and she can no longer get a transplant. All right. Just
Mm,
there's just no way that it's
That's
going to
my
work.
worst fear.
Yeah. Yeah. What did, what crossed my mind at that point is now here's a real model of joy because she has a 10-year-old. All right. And
Mm,
she knows what she has to do. So she's, the last kidney, she embraced it as long as she could, and she didn't fear anything. She chose to say, what comes, I'll deal with today. I'm not going to anticipate. I'll deal with it today when it happens.
Absolutely right. I often say, don't borrow trouble. I tell myself that.
Yeah,
Don't borrow trouble because here I am. I'm having a good day today, and I can't tell you what's going to happen in 5 years.
no.
And what a waste of worry. Like so much of the things we worry about, we're worrying about things that we're creating in our minds before they even happen. And I don't want to waste my worry and I don't want to borrow trouble. So I just kind of, keep on going and try. I take very good care of myself. I'm a very compliant patient, which I think is important for kidney
Absolutely.
patients. I mean, I like kidney patients to know their whys because there are reasons when when you need to limit your potassium, for example. I want people to know why they need to limit their potassium because if you love baked potatoes and you think, oh, I'm not supposed to eat this, but I'm just going to eat this anyway, especially a dialysis patient, it's, I think, easier to manage these things if you know if I eat too much potassium, I could cause a fatal arrhythmia. It makes it a little bit easier to make your choices when you
Yep.
know what the stakes are. So, yeah, I think that we need to be compliant patients and then just do what we can do for ourselves and then not borrow the worry of the other things. We have to just kind of go through our lives and make them the best we can. And I also find, and I think you might agree with this, is that when something comes along, like a chronic kidney disease, FSGS, it's hard and it sort of scoops a hole out of us. But that hole can fill, like we can fill that hole with the joy that we gain from appreciating being alive. And that can be very simple things. I mean, I try to, like every morning, I have a really delicious cup of coffee, and I really enjoy that cup of coffee. And if the sky is blue, I'm pretty excited about it. And I have an adorable dog, and she just loves me a lot. And I love my little moments with my little tail wagging puppy. And our lives are filled with so many things if we appreciate these kind of mini moments. It that fills that hole, and we have this kind of brand new way of experiencing all the little miracles in our days, and that's the way I like to live my life.
Well, just talking to you, just it lifts you up. I mean, that's just the way it is. And when you talk to a kidney patient, especially what I call an infant uh, patient, somebody who
Yeah,
has no clue what's going on and is full of questions, and you hear the question and you go through the question and you tell them how it really works and what's going on. Uh, you have to realize when you work with somebody, when you mentor someone, they're not a bag of questions. They are totally incompetent to understand what's going on. They have no knowledge
yeah,
base, zero.
yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So everything they say to you, you've got to take with a grain of salt and then work to get the answer for them right away, right up off the bat. When somebody asks you, well, how long am I going to live? Well, Is that really what you want to think about right now, today? Is
Yeah.
that really how much? Why don't you think about it from a standpoint of what do I need today to live? What is it that I
Yeah.
need to do with my body and my mind and my soul? What is it that I need to do today? All right.
Yeah.
That's already preparing for what's coming without looking back.
Yep.
A lot
Yeah.
of people look back. Well, if I done this or if it, because this kidney disease is not FSGS. It's a multitude of things, including
Yeah.
diabetes, that can cause it.
Yes.
So
That's the number one cause of kidney failure,
yeah,
diabetes and high
yeah,
blood pressure.
yeah. But the whole point here is that what is it that's causing it? You'd be amazed at how many people don't even want to know or have not been told or whatever what it is they have. It happens all the
Yeah.
time. You ask them,
Yeah.
well, what kind of kidney disease do you have? And they say, well, somebody said something about hypertension. Well, that's the issue. That's everybody's got with kidney disease has hypertension because the kidneys
Yeah.
control blood pressure. So my point
Yeah.
here is to get back to you is that we always we always make adjustments. Our life, whether we know it or not, or feel it or not, is a constant adjustment. And when you
Yes.
have had your kidney many times like you have, or long like I have, you don't stop aging.
Mm-mm.
You continue to age. And that presents even more difficulties for you as a transplant patient. And
Yeah.
dialysis is much the same. The biological clock is ticking. So waiting is probably not something you want to do. It's not, should
Yeah.
not be in your vocabulary. And that brings me to the fact that, you really want to make sure that you know what it is, your options, and then go for it. But stay the course. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of options too. I mean,
Sure.
I really like when kidney patients, you're right. When you're first diagnosed, there's this hit of just like confusion and
Oh,
sadness. And over time, I think many kidney patients, and I encourage them to do this, gather information. Now, all of a sudden, if you get to the point where, okay, I've got this, what can I do about it? There are things you can control and there are things you can't control.
yep.
And the best you can do is control what you can and then just let go of the rest. Because, if you think backwards, like, what did I do to cause this? That's not helpful. If
Nope.
you think too far forwards, like, I'm going to have a bad life, what's going to happen ahead? That's not helpful. So
Nope.
you really have to do what you can, control your days so that you're healthy as you can be, and then just appreciate these moments that you have. But yeah, I don't know if you did this, but I for so long was thinking, what caused this FSGS? What was it? Like I wanted to pinpoint something that I could blame for the reason that I got this out of the blue, autoimmune related kidney disease. And a doctor told me at one point, we're never going to know what caused it. We don't know we can't get rid of it. We don't know what caused it. You got to like let your mind free up from that question because you can't answer it. And I think that that's true. I don't know if you felt like that too.
Oh, absolutely. When I first started, I remember sitting at work. As an RN, on the floor, and a kidney patient had come in, and I'd noticed that they were carrying a diagnosis of FSGS, and I'd say to myself, and this is when I was just doing general nursing, hadn't specialized, and I thought to myself, wonder what he's thinking, you know, wonder what he's thinking. Well, it wasn't what he was thinking; it was what I was thinking. I was hoping for a
Yeah.
cure. I hoped for a cure for a long time before I went on and had a transplant. I prayed
Yeah.
for a cure. I was praying for the wrong thing. God finally
Yeah.
sent, you know, thank God he sent Mulgrew to me because he steered me
Yes.
correctly. And that you talk about that in your book about having somebody in your life, and nephrologists are gee whiz, they're really the linchpin when you think about it. And he was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and, and the whole point being, you're not going to beat this. All right.
Yeah.
You
And
might
accepting
outlive it.
that. Yeah.
You might outlive it. Look at me, 36 years. 74 years old. Um, I can't say that
It's
FSGS
encouraging.
it.
You really,
Yeah.
you inspire me. Just seeing you inspires me because,
That
I mean, hope is important. I like having hope. I think it can't hurt, you
no,
know?
no, 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 no.
And the
And
thing about like if someone asks you how long will I live, I think the answer to that is nobody knows. I mean,
no, no.
this is one thing I wanted to mention because this was kind of a philosophy that I gained that sort of helped me is, and it's a sad story, but I was on dialysis before my first transplant, young 20,
Yep.
22-year-old with a lot of elderly patients. But um, I like to say it kind of became like a medical version of Cheers. Like I would go there and everyone knows your name. We had a lot of
Right.
camaraderie there. Um, but there was a technician there named Tom, and you might remember this from the book. And he was like the picture of health. And he helped everyone with their fistulas. Everyone wanted him to do the needles because he was just very competent and kind of ran the clinic. It was at a hospital at that time. There wasn't a lot of DaVitas and Freseniuses on corners, but so it was at a hospital. But he was about 33. And I came into dialysis one day, and the social worker came up to me very sad to tell me that Tom had died the night
Oh
before.
no.
He had a brain
Yeah, I
aneurysm.
remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
And Tom was like the healthy one,
Yeah.
and I just could not get through my brain that
Great
we all
example.
outlived Tom, all these dialysis patients. And at that point, I realized, oh my gosh, you're either alive or you're not. And I am every bit as alive today as Tom was yesterday. So while I am alive, since there's no guarantees for anybody, I'm going to really cherish being alive. And there was something about the fact that he wasn't sick. It was just a random, horrible happening that made me kind of let go of the idea that something bad is going to happen to me because none of us know what's going to happen.
Mm. I can never had it. I always felt that I had the transplant for a reason, and that was to live, to
Yeah.
raise my family, to
Yeah.
get educated, get further educated. But always in the back of my mind is at some point in time, God's going to tell me when I can start working really closely with patients.
And
That
look what
was,
you've done.
I know. And that's what has always been in the back of my mind. But then I thought to myself, okay, fine, I'll go. And I just did over the years, worked with people, worked with people, and worked with people. And then I got to this place in developing this corporation, if you will, or this entity. And when we first started, there were a couple in the group that wanted to franchise it. And I said, well, that's going to leave me out. You guys are not, you're not really, that's not the focus that I'm going on. And I am going, it's my idea, and we're not franchising. There will be no cost to this
Yeah.
to anybody. All right. I'm not taking a salary. You want to take a salary, you're going to have to go somewhere else. Well, eventually they both did. They both left. Okay. So in my heart, this has been a calling. This has not been something I wanted to do. Right. It's
Right.
been a
You were
passion.
guided.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was a vision. There was a vision.
Yeah.
And that vision was always put the patient first, patient focus. That's what you got to do. Because if you don't, then you've lost the concept of helping others, and you're not helping yourself anymore.
Yeah.
That
It's
came
been
out.
really impressive, Kent. I'm kind of blown away by what you've been able to do with the gift that you've been given. I mean, and your brother is a big part of Kidney Solutions because he gave you the engine inside you to create this really, really wonderful organization.
Let me tell you what my brothers, because I had one that was on odd man out. My brothers have meant a tremendous amount to me, and they've every step of the way. My brother that gave me the kidney is not he's not an extrovert at all. Very, very introvert. But his attitude at the time was, My other brother, Kerry, has two kids. I'm going to do this. He unfortunately turned out to be the closest, you know,
Mm,
match.
it's amazing.
But this whole concept of kidney solutions is not mine, right? It's just like the concept of your kidney getting a name or something like. This is not my kidney. This is my brother's
Hmm.
kidney. And I think you lose focus of that. A lot of people just move on, but you're dedicated after you've had a transplant to taking care of it. That's not your
Yeah.
kidney. It's not,
No,
it's part of you, but it's not your kidney. And so
you better take
consequently,
care of it
you
for
better,
sure.
you better. And I got that right away from your book. I got that from you just talking with you,
Yeah.
honestly, I've just loved it. We could go on, we could do this all day long and we could
I
focus
know
on.
we have a lot of similar experiences, and like you, I mean, this sounds weird to say. I don't know how to say it where it doesn't sound kind of morbid, but I mean, I knew that in my life, and like we all have uncertain lives, I had to write this book because
Mm-hmm.
the way, because I just thought I have something here. I have something and I want to share it. And this is the way I can share it because I love to write. I'm a writer. So, what better way for me to communicate with people how we muddle through and try to find joy and make the best of what's a difficult circumstance? And there was a point where, I have a daughter. I'm my second deceased donor transplant is when I got pregnant. And I think that's such an amazing story in
Oh, that's
itself that
a
someone who
story in
gave me
itself.
the gift of life
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to create a life. So she's 26. She's a genius. She lives in Brooklyn, New York, and she's a writer producer for Paramount Network. And her life is because somebody checked a box. That's
Yep.
how I was able to create that life. So, I mean, the miracles just keep coming. But I thought when she was younger, I thought, what if I get hit by a bus and she never knows what a miracle she is and the miracles of our lives. So I really felt compelled to write something so that if I did get hit by that bus, she would always know.
Oh, that's a
And
great idea.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted it to be on paper. And then doing the mentoring work that I do, I thought, oh, I want to share this more broadly. And that first book that I wrote was kind of for family and friends. And I was working with a book coach, and she said, you've got to write this to be, published in a broad way for a broad audience because you have a lot to share here. And I was so excited that Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review and said there's a lot of wisdom in these pages. And I just felt like I feel very satisfied that I'm still here and was able to write this book because if I would have got hit by that bus before I had written the book, I would have felt something was unrealized. Like you, I felt a calling to do the work that I'm doing to be an advocate for kidney patients. So I think we're both very lucky that we're still here and able to help other people. I think it's very satisfying that we can take the gifts we've been given and pass them forward in the ways that we can.
I think in my heart that it makes you a better person doing what we do.
Yes,
You're not
because we care about other people.
absolutely, it's
I
not
tell a
about
lot of
us.
patients when I talk to patients, and one of the things I really like to tell patients when they're ready at this point, it can be too hard at the first, time of diagnosis, but eventually I think people can start getting looped into their own thoughts too much and very self-focused. And one of the best ways to get out of that is to help other people
Yep.
because
Exactly.
none of us are ever
Exactly.
the only one going through hard things.
Mm-mm.
So it helps me and you to help other people because we can. And it's a way to get out of yourself. Sometimes we spiral into ourselves too much and we need to spiral out.
Only thing, the only thing with that concept, and I don't take issue with it, I agree with it totally. The one thing that I think embellishes it is the fact that if you think about yourself, the only time you need to get selfish is when you're looking for a donor. That's when you
Yeah.
really need to get selfish. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the backup selfish. I'm talking about You got to be focused on yourself and your needs and only your needs at this point in time. That's when you start, drafting everybody else around you to help.
Right.
But you have
Yes, for
to,
sure.
you can expect, not one iota can you expect your friend to find you a donor. That
Yeah.
search is up to you. I don't care what word you put on it, ask or whatever.
Right.
You have to be all in. You got to push your whole pile of chips in and say, you know, I'm going for it. And if you're
Right.
not, then you're not ready. You won't find that donor. That donor will not come.
Yeah, and I'm sure people like recoil at the word selfish because nobody
Yep.
wants to be selfish.
Yep.
But another way to think of it is like what your wife said to you, like we need you.
Yep.
Well, when you're a kidney patient and you need to find a donor, there's people in your life that need you,
Yeah.
so you, if it's easier, think of them. Think of the people who are counting on you to be, quote unquote selfish for a little
That's
bit,
very
because
good.
it's
And
not selfish if you're there for your family. You
yep.
have to think of the connections in your life and who you're interwoven with and do it for them.
Yep. I agree with that. But if you don't focus first off on what the mission is to find yourself a kidney,
Yep.
then if you're expecting others to do it for you, like an
Yeah.
agency or something, that doesn't
Oh,
fly. And
no.
that's the first thing out of my mouth. I'm not
Yep.
here to find you a kidney. I'm not here to find a donor. I'm here to help you find your donor.
Yeah.
That that
Yep.
that sets the stage for me and for them.
And this
There's
the stakes are
expectation.
high. So
Oh
sometimes we have to
my.
do things that feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
when the stakes are so high.
One of the one of the most important things to remember in the whole process is once you've had a transplant, you make the best of it. And I think you
Yep.
have to focus. That's the only time I looked into the future is when you want to get that kidney, when you're gonna get the kidney, you've got a donor and everything. And then the process becomes transplant's easy. Is what are you going to do afterwards? And that's what
Yeah.
we focus on at Kidney Solutions. We tell them
Yeah.
that you this is easy. This piece of cake here is you got skilled people doing all of the things that you need to be done to put that kidney in there. All right. And it's going to
Yeah.
go as proceeded. But now when you wake up and you have all these tubes and then after, 5 days when you're up and walking and you're going home, you got a plan? That's what we want to do. We want to have a plan for them. All right. So I can
Yeah.
tell you these transplant programs, they're so busy. They have no plan other than to make sure that you get out the door well. All right. They'll give
Yeah.
you a call or two. But in all essence, always is you that needs to be in response to that. You're the one that's
Yeah.
responsible for yourself.
You have to be an advocate for yourself. There's no way to manage the medical system
Nope.
if you're not your best advocate.
Yep. And there is, believe me, in my heart now, as I've been in it for so long, I think we've lost urgency in this whole process. There is no feeling of urgency, especially coming from the other side from the transplant programs. They have a they're so busy. There's so many people that are looking. And bless their hearts, you can't
Yeah.
staff up to that. There's no way. I've been in
Right.
nursing and then you can't staff up to it. But it
Yeah.
is an attitude. And in general, you can't as an example, now I'm on a bunny trail and I'm coming back just a second. When you make a
Okay.
phone call, you make a phone call to the transplant team and they said, well, not here now. Please leave a message, leave your name and your phone number, and I'll get back to you in 24 hours. Is that something somebody wants to hear? Nope.
No. No. I mean, especially the anxiety level of some of those phone calls from a new patient.
Yep.
It's you got to talk to a person.
Absolutely. And you know what? Work with consulting with some of the couple transplant teams. I said, please take that off of there. You tell them they will,
Good for you.
you come up with something different than that. I even heard one the other day, had 48 hours, and I call them every day. I call transplant programs every day. We'll get back to you in
48
48 hours.
hours.
Well, that's just like saying, who cares? So what? Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
that's not good.
No,
You're right. If those are good examples of not enough urgency.
there is no urgency here. You can, and I've argued this with nephrologists, and I've argued it with my doctor, and well, we're too busy. No, I get that. All right. I'm busy too.
Yeah.
But just think
Yeah.
about that person that you say will get back to you in 24 hours. They're going to wait now, even if you do get back to them within the hour.
Yeah.
It's not the same as
Yeah.
being told, we'll get right back to you. And if we
Yep.
haven't, you call us tomorrow or
Yes.
at the
That's
end of the
better.
shift. Something that tells them that they're in charge,
Yeah.
not left out there wallowing and thinking, well,
And
why?
their call is important. Like they want to know what's going on.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah.
I
And
always
donors.
thought I kind of like if I could create a system, I always thought it would be better to have an emergency room specifically for transplant patients, like as part of a clinic. I know this
Mhm.
isn't practical, but I'm not talking practicalities.
No, there's no.
Just because, when transplant patients have something come up and they have to go to an emergency room, I was in an emergency room once and I met another kidney transplant patient there. And we were talking and we both thought, the things that we need right now, like we shouldn't be around all these other people. And it might be more simple. Like we just thought, what if we had our own emergency room that was just
Yeah,
staffed with people who would deal with these issues? Wouldn't that be better?
yeah. One of the things you think about here, when you take that, when you go to the emergency room. Now, here's from the clinical side. When you walk in as a transplant patient and you declare yourself, that's the first thing I do when I walk in. I have had a kidney transplant 36 years ago, and I've had somebody say, "Well, what are you doing, bragging?" I said, "No, I'm alerting you to the fact that I have my brother's kidney. All right, I only have one, and I just want you to don't make light of it, but just make sure you note it. All right, that should be the
Yeah.
top of your list." And I tell all my
Yeah.
patients the same thing. You've got to declare yourself. But the most
Yeah.
important thing is that you realize that they're going to call the nephrologist right away. They're not going to see you. They'll do an
Yeah.
initial intake on you. They wash their hands of transplant patients and dialysis patients. The minute you walk into ER, they're on the phone to the
Yeah.
nephrology department.
They're scared of us.
Oh, absolutely. And I've had doctors tell me that. I've had internal medicine doctors tell me, dialysis patients scare the death out of me because I am not adequately prepared to care for them. That's why I call. And really, if
Yeah.
you think about their educational level, and strictly just an internal medicine doc can't, within 5 minutes, elevate himself to the level of education that a nephrologist has. And
Right.
I have
Right.
no problem. Matter of fact, I tell him I wish you get a hold of Dr. So-and-so for me right now and tell him I'm here.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah. Yeah. We need our specialists for
yes,
sure.
we
And thank
do.
goodness for nephrologists.
Yep, yep. And good nephrologists are hard to come by, and transplant nephrologists are even harder to come by. All right.
Yeah.
So
And there's a
there you go.
shortage right now. I
Well,
mean, they are really
yeah,
busy because there's a
yeah.
shortage of them.
Failing, wishing, receiving, accepting, unfailing. What are those points? Just tell me what those
There's
mean.
5 parts. You're referring to 5 parts in the book.
Absolutely.
Failing was I had kidney failure, a sudden kidney failure. And that was, horrible. Okay. So what's the second one? You're going to have to
Wishing?
remind me as I go
Yeah.
through.
Oh no, I wish.
Wishing. Oh, wishing. I was just wishing, like I said, that, okay, I'm going to get this transplant and go back to Seattle. I'm wishing to like reclaim my life.
Receiving
I received the greatest gift, more than one, obviously,
4 times.
and
Yeah.
4 gifts.
Yeah.
And actually, the 4 gifts really equals to 5 because of the indirect donation of my husband and then the
Mm-hmm.
altruistic
Mm-hmm.
donor. So
Mm-hmm.
receiving, you kind of become an expert receiver when you're a kidney transplant patient, which is hard to do. It's hard to receive.
Right.
And it takes a lot of adjustment to be able to receive.
Let me tell you, most people, if you talk to them after they're so sick, and I guess use myself as an example. You're so sick that receiving is the only thing you have hope for anymore. And you get
Yeah.
really down on that level.
Yeah. And
It's
then you're blown away. You're blown
yeah,
away
and
by
then
these acts of
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, you just uh, accepting.
And what was accepting is big. I think you would agree that when you have an incurable illness and it's never going away, there's a couple routes you can take. But I think acceptance for me was a very peaceful realization. And I kind of liken it to if you're floating down a river and you're trying to go against the current, it's so exhausting. And there are things you can't control. You can't control a current. But if you float with the current and you just do the best you can and just know you're just going to go with the flow, oh, that acceptance is such a beautiful feeling of surrender to living your life well.
That's the one I'm the most grateful for because I did
Yeah.
early on. Thank you, Dr. Mulgrew. I accepted it. He always said to me, let God take care of this because if something comes up, we'll all handle it. One way or the
Yeah.
other, we'll handle it. All right.
That's beautiful.
And it wasn't treatment.
Beautiful.
We're not going to give you some point. It was we will, not you will, we will.
Yeah.
And that part of acceptance has always stuck in my heart. And that's why I try to work when I work with patients. It's not about you do this or I do that, or it's a we. It's a we
Yeah.
proposition. And that's
Yeah.
accepting. That helps a lot. And the
It's very
final
helpful.
one's unfailing.
Unfailing. I realized in time, like I felt like such a failure at first when I had kidney failure. And there's a lot of, I think, I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but there's shame that comes with illness, like we've
Mhm.
done something wrong somehow. And that's silly, but it's easy to feel that way. And then by the end of the book, I realized I'm here. I'm so here. And maybe I'm the opposite of failing. Maybe I'm unfailing because I'm alive and I'm savoring my life and I'm grateful to so many people and I'm able to give back to others. So I wrapped that up as the opposite of failing.
Yeah. 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 So, folks, that's the five parts of this book, Incurable Optimist. Uh, don't think there's anything, Jennifer, here that we've missed. We've missed a ton of things that we could go on talking about
We could talk
forever.
all day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's good. It, I'd have one question for you because we're in the same boat. We have been in
Sure.
since we were diagnosed. At points in time, as you talk with people, or if you're just doing something, washing the dishes or folding clothes or reading a book, do you have an emotional feeling come over to you where you tear up?
Oh yeah. I I'm an incurable optimist, but I am a human being and I go through a lot of things and I get blown away a lot by I get all the emotions. I'm not a one note emotion person. So
Yeah.
I feel frustration and sadness sometimes as I'm still managing, incurable things. I have a pretty active medical life. I I feel so grateful where even my daughter now said if I ever need another kidney, which I likely will, she wants to donate. That I don't even know how to talk about that. I feel a lot. Like I'm a very feeling person. And so yeah,
Yes, you
there's a lot
are.
of times where I I sometimes think it's easy to describe it as the overwhelmingness can
Mhm.
be very overwhelming
Yep.
and the ongoingness can be very ongoing and those can make me feel a lot of different things and so I feel like I have to work a program with myself. If I get like out on tangents or I worry or something comes up and I feel frustrated, I just, I feel what I feel. I let it go through me. And then I try to always come back to my gratitude and my joy for being alive.
See, that's that feeling that I get, and it I think it's increased as I've gotten older. All right. Because I'm not looking back, but there are things that will enter my mind, and remembrances. Uh,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I can be sitting in church and come in and I'll greet the Lord and I'll just pray within internally, constant prayer. And I'll sit there and I'll be so grateful that I'll tear up. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
bawling and sobbing, but I be
Yeah,
in the
but you're
middle of a
feeling,
hymn.
you're a feeling human.
Absolutely. And I don't want I want them to understand, and this come up in our support group a lot of times. I was doing this, that, and then I started crying. And oh, that's baloney. Well, it's not. It is
Mm-mm.
those emotions are predicated on the fact that you feel for yourself and others. And that's the most
Yeah.
important. You're not so internal that you have no emotion at all. This is an
Yeah.
emotional ride, much more than
It,
anything. It's an emotional ride. This
and
FSGS
we have to feel
kidney
our
series.
emotions. Where do they go if we don't
Yeah,
feel them?
yeah. You can't expel them. You can't. You hold
Right.
them in. The longer you hold them in, then they fester, and then you do bawl because you're gonna
Yeah.
cry. You're gonna succumb to your emotions, whether you do it in public or you do it at home. I want people to know that it comes.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
doesn't mean you're not joyful. It just means
no.
that you're human.
Yeah, it's impossible and unfair for anyone to expect that they're going to feel joy all the time. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Mm-mm.
You can't do that as a human being. And I think, our social media culture shows like shiny, happy lives. And then I think people start to feel like they're supposed to have this perfect life if they kind of fall into that, messaging of social media. I can guarantee anybody, whether they want to admit it or not, you're going to have sorrow and you're going to have joy. I like to say we have beauty and we have bummers. And sometimes there is beauty in the bummers, but there's definitely an intermix of all these things in our lives. And we have to feel all of them because if we don't, I think it's destructive. It gets lodged inside of you. But yeah, the sorrow and the bombers don't obliterate the joy and the
Nope.
beauty. We have
Nope.
both in our lives.
And I just want to tell you one thing. There's a certain degree of willingness on my part to tell you that you're very special. I
Well,
just
thank
want
you
you to
so
know,
much.
I want you to know not only the book, but just this a conversation. And I hope when these people that listen to it get the same feeling. But you have panache. You're just well put together. Let's just put it that way. And when
That
you
makes me feel really good. Thank you
yeah,
so much for saying that.
and when you throw it up and throw it out to people, that's a blessing. It's not just a good
Mm,
thing, that's a blessing. And God bestows blessings on everyone, but I think he cranks up the valve a little bit more on certain people because he knows they really enjoy helping others. And that's all he did. That's all Jesus Christ's life was helping others.
yeah,
He had no,
that is
it was never on him. It was always on the others.
that's such a lovely thing to say.
And it's truthful.
I'm
It's not
like
patronization.
soaking in your loveliness. That's really, really nice.
Okay, folks. I don't want to go, but I'm going. And because I'm going to have this gal back again, we're going to do something, I think, with a couple other people. That's it just came over in my mind. I want you to think about this. If after you've listened to this, whether it took you an hour or whatever, you came back to it and you can always get a hold of us. Get a hold of me
Yeah.
at Kidney Solutions, 830-285-2140, or go to the website, kidneysolutions.org. I will personally put you in touch with Jennifer, and her book is all over the internet, Incurable Optimist, Living with Illness and Chronic Hope.
Yes. And can
Jennifer
I say,
Kramer,
some
absolutely.
people I know, some people, if they can't concentrate well, if they're, foggy from dialysis or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
some people prefer audiobooks, and it is available on audio, and ebook and print. But I just like to say that because I know sometimes kidney patients tell me it's easier for them to listen than to read.
Absolutely.
And my website, people can always contact me there. It's jenniferkramermiller.com, and Kramer is with a C. And I have an email form on there that goes right to my email. If anyone wants to reach out, I would be happy to hear from anybody.
There. Now you got it from her, and it was well done. So I think you better read this book. And I'll tell you from the deepest part of my heart is it's a game changer for you because you'll go back. You'll keep going back with it. I loved it. And I love you, Jennifer, and I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, Kent, thank you so much. This was the best conversation, an hour. I don't know if it's been an hour. I
I
don't know
don't
how
know. I
long it's
haven't looked
been,
at it. Don't care.
but you are, I have to say it again, such an amazing man. What you're doing, Kidney Solutions, and your passion and work behind that, and your philosophy about it. I am so inspired by it. And so I just appreciate so much we had this time to talk. You're really an amazing person.
You are too,
Thank
and I
you.
want you to come to the support group one time and talk to us. I'll call you and
I
talk
know,
to you.
and I really want to. I have to
Yep.
tell you, I know it's Monday nights,
Yes.
and I have been doing this sort of plasmapheresis on Mondays, which kind of wipes me out. So when I
Okay.
don't have that on a Monday, I am going to
You
come.
you just show up and I'll just turn you loose because
Okay.
it's this support group is for people. It's not for me. These people that come on this, my patients, friends, not patients, they're my friends. The Kidney
Yeah.
Solution supporters. We had 52 people the other night, so that ought to
Yeah.
kind of give you an
I
idea.
definitely, I keep what I'm on this kind of weird schedule right now. I promise when I get off this
You
Monday thing that makes me all exhausted, I'm coming to that group. I think it'll be
you
fantastic.
tell me we want you to be part of it
Okay, good.
because
Thank you. I would love
you
to.
can help a lot of people, and they just you know well that's just it. That's the invite. It's open. You come anytime you want. Dadgummit, I don't want to, but we have to. We're going to close. I just want you to remember one thing from me, and don't forget: keep breathing.